Geek Therapy Radio.
Welcome to the Geek Therapy Radio podcast. I am your mental curator, Johnny Hemberger, as always. And last night got me thinking about something. I wasn't realizing, and maybe I should have. Do you remember, those of you who are old enough, model train sets? So I have a little cheap model train set. I think it's what are they called, power trains or something. They're super duper cheap. They're run off of it's run off of 2 AAA batteries. You can buy them at Target all day long. I want to say it's under $20. I enjoy the train set for what it is. I bought several more packs of track pieces just to have some fun with, because, like I said, it's super cheap to get into. It's a train set, and I'm willing to concede a few areas of quality for the sake of cheapness. But nonetheless, the power trains, I want to call them 2.0, whatever, they're nice. And I have it going under the Christmas tree, and it just got me thinking. I mentioned a few episodes ago on the podcast how sometimes when I remember things, it was during the Mini 4-wheel drive episode, that I remember the smell of that car, of that electric toy car that was powered by 2 AA batteries and went around the little track. I remember how the actual car smelled, the plastic of the car. I remember how the car would smell different after you had been running the motor for a little while, like especially while the motor was being broken in. I don't know if there's some sort of grease in the motor, or it's just the copper coils around the motor just heat up and they kind of melt the plastic a little bit, but it gives off a different smell when the electric motor has been on for a little while. But the point is that these smells, like this memory comes into my mind, but immediately it's like the smell of it comes into my mind. Not necessarily like you remember the smell of your grandma's pumpkin pie, but I remember, just like I do remember the smell of food, I remember the smell of toys or things I played with and used in the past. So while I was messing around with the train under the tree and trying to get my cat to not knock it off the tracks anymore, which it's a fool's errand. Sassy's just gonna... My train was derailed, and I didn't understand why it was derailed, because I left the night before, went to bed the night before. The train was still on the track where it stopped. I came back down out into the living room, and the train was off its track. And I was like, why? How? What ghost knocked the train off of its tracks before I got up, came out of the bedroom the next morning? And it puzzled me for a day or so, and then I saw it last night, and I posted it to my Geek Therapy Radio Instagram. I found the ghost that had been knocking my train off of its tracks, and it was Sassy. She doesn't slap the train off the track. She just lays on it. She just kind of like gets up close to it and lays down, and her meat or her skin rolls just kind of push the train off the tracks. What are you doing, Sass? So I'm on this train kick, or at least I was last night. One of the memories that came to mind was the smell of the little puffs of smoke that model trains would make. And I was trying to remember, how did it make that smell? I remember my dad or my mom or my uncle dripping something into the top of the smokestack of the model train. And I believe it's vegetable oil. I want to say it's vegetable oil or cooking oil. It's something that you can buy easily at the grocery store. For some reason, I was thinking maybe it was like machine oil or actual motor oil, something like that. No, it's cooking oil. It's something completely safe. But just the smell of those little puffs, and I would wait for the train to come around from under the tree back in the day as a kid for those little puffs of smoke, and I wouldn't stick my nose. Well, maybe sometimes I'd stick it right on top of the smokestack. Don't tell anybody. But just a little smell as it would waft. That it's not like a smoky smell like out of an exhaust pipe of a car or a diesel truck or anything like that. It's a very unique smell that these little puffs of smoke smell like coming out of a model train, and it just sent me down this nostalgia trip. So that got me on Amazon. That got me searching for a train set. I had a little budget, around or below $100. Just see what I could get. I haven't ordered anything yet because, as you'll come to realize, as you'll know, as we discuss here in the podcast, that it's kind of a tall order to find a good quality train for under $100. And here's the point. Here's what became glaringly obvious within 20 or 30 minutes of perusing through different eBay lists. I was like, Amazon items. I was just thinking, why are all of these plastic? I don't remember old train sets being so flimsy and plasticky. And so I start reading through some reviews, and there's I don't want to call them old hat, but I'll say some vintage fellows leaving reviews saying overall what particular train is a nice train, but it's so flimsy and then things break, and even the die cast, if it is die cast metal on the actual train wheels, that actually turn the wheels, that they kind of crack and they shear. And the big problem with what's the company? Lionel? I think Lionel trains, they've shipped off production to China. And remember the good old days when these were made in the United States and they're high quality. And somebody brought up a very, very good point that they had a hand-me-down, not a hand-me-down, but an heirloom Lionel train set from 1939 that their father had given to them, or their grandfather had given to them. And that train set, that electric train set from 1939, is still in way, way better shape than this new product that they bought off of Amazon. But that kind of spurred the question, what happened to the metal trains? So you can still buy metal trains, but as you would imagine, they get just, I'm not going to say stratospherically expensive, because if you're into the model train hobby, you can tell me better than I know because I'm just a layperson with the amateur train hobby, but you pay for quality. And if you want the highest quality train sets of various sizes, you're going to pay more for metal trains. So if you're looking for a train set on eBay and you see one for $68 and it includes 24 pieces of track and it's made by Lionel, and Lionel's been in business since the 1900 or whatever it is, well over 100 years, and Lionel quality. Yeah, but they're modern trains. They're built in China, and I'm not going to say they're complete crap, but using the name Lionel, I think, wasn't their slogan something along the lines of their motto, something like that was the quality goes in before the name goes on, something like that. I don't think that's their motto anymore after shipping operations over to China. But yeah, that $68 Polar Express Lionel train set is not, I'm not going to call it bad. As at the end of the day, it might be something like that I go with, because I don't know how much I can justify spending, over $200, and I'm sure that it gets exponentially more expensive from there. I'm sure you can easily spend over $1,000 on a high quality train set nowadays. But at the same time, I don't want to go too cheap. I can't swallow over $200 for a train set that, yes, I will use from time to time, but I'm thinking of where would I use it outside of Christmas time? I would imagine train set sales skyrocket over Christmas time because people want to put these trains underneath their trees, and then they throw them all in the box again, and that's probably how they get broken, is being thrown back in the box or ripped out of the box because they're not placed back in the box correctly, or you haven't saved the box to put the trains and the cars and the tracks and everything back in their protective styrofoam, or you just let the kids have at it and they're busting tracks and bending the connections and all sorts of things. I read one, it's funny, I know enough about model trains to know this kind of, it would seem sort of obscure to just the, I don't want to call you average for listening, the average listener, but let's face it, I'm not an expert in many areas of subject and of geekdom and hobbies, and that's why we learn. We learn about these different areas and different aspects of each hobby. But one thing I do know about trains is that a lot of the times, especially in higher quality train sets, the way you connect the cars together, it's not how you would think. You would think that you just take the cars and you just kind of put them together off the track and set them on the track, or just set everything on the track and just kind of bump the cars into each other and they just kind of snap in together and connect the cars together. That's not really how it works on higher quality train sets. There are links of track. So the reviewer was so pissed off because he couldn't get the linkage for the trains were broken. And the only way he managed to get the trains together was he noticed on a straight piece of track, and by that time it was too broken and just faulty and blah blah blah. So on higher quality train sets, there are magnets, at least as I understand it, and correct me if I'm wrong, geektherapy@iheartmedia.com. One more time, geektherapy@iheartmedia.com, or just go to Geek Therapy Radio on Facebook or Twitter, whatever, get at me. But there are certain links of straight track that have magnets in the track, and you're supposed to line up the cars, the linkages, over the magnet, and the magnet kind of releases the latch or loosens the latch in some sort of way. So you have to have the cars and the linkages over that magnet before you can connect the cars together. That's how I understand it. And I know that's the way it works in a lot of train sets, but that's something that, mark my words, I would guarantee you 90 out of 100 people, just random people on Amazon, buying a $68 train set or what have you, or more, that might not be so clear to them. They may not either remember, or they just have no idea that it doesn't operate the way you think it operates in your mind. I'm a man, don't get me wrong, and my wife knows this. I mean, obviously she knows anyways. Men, we don't like to read instructions so much. There's a lot of times where we open this new garden toy or tool set toy or whatever toy, or a fan that we get from Home Depot, or work on our car some sort of way, but we don't need instructions. Those instructions away. Assembly, throw those IKEA things away. We don't need this. We'll figure it out. And then you're left with 25 out of 30 screws left over. You're wondering why the dang thing is leaning over like the Leaning Tower of Pisa. So we don't really like to read instructions. So I imagine this Amazon reviewer, who was all up in arms and wanted his money back in a refund from this defective train set, was probably pretty pissed because he couldn't figure out how to put together, because he never opened the instructions. And he didn't realize that with higher quality train sets, you have to put it over a specific straight piece, because those pieces have the magnets in them, and the magnets release the latches for the train cars. And he didn't know the nuances of higher quality train sets. These are not the cheap $30 train sets that he knows from passing by the toy aisle in Walmart's that he may have seen. And there's a little bit more involved in this hobby. So yeah, it got me a little bit depressed. I have a little gift card, and it's for $50, and I was thinking, yeah, that'll go a long way towards a train, and I may still wind up doing this, but I may just have to bite the bullet and realize that if I want a higher quality train set with actual puffing smoke, because that's another thing that costs a little bit extra. You can't rinky-dink, for the most part, rinky-dink little trains that run off of a couple AA batteries don't have the puffing smoke feature. And that's just very important to me, to have that little puff of smoke, because it's so nostalgic. And trains make puff of smoke, they make steam. There's something coming out of it. And the other thing, a lot of these model trains make too much dang noise. And I don't mean the trains running over the tracks. I want the sound of the actual wheels running over the track. That sounds like a train. All the fake noises I'm talking about. Woo, woo. They're just going around the track. Woo, woo. Usually you can control that from the little remote control. I get that. And that's fun to do once in a while when kids and nephews come over and whatever, nieces, and they want to make the train sounds. That's fine. But just in general, the train making noise, or like playing Christmas carols, or just music or quotes from a movie or something, it's too much. So one thing I've also learned is that in these types of trains, the suggestion is literally get the screwdriver, open the little compartment where the speaker is, and disconnect the 2 wires to the speaker. That seems kind of silly with a model train that you would have to go to such a length to disable the noise. It should just have a mute. Like I said before, all I want to hear from a model train is the wheels physically connecting to the track in the real world, not a fake, but just the real on the actual plastic and metal tracks. So I guess I'll just say this while I'm remembering it. If you have a suggestion for a good model train set that preferably made of metal or mostly metal, just not all plastic, not an all plastic piece of rinky-dink junk, just something that will last a while, preferably made of metal, that puffs smoke, that is not prohibitively expensive. And I know that's completely relative. Cost is relative, and expense and affordability is relative. But if you have any suggestions for a good, high-quality train set that makes smoke, maybe it's a little more plasticky than I would like. Who knows? But if you have a suggestion under $150, because this is something that I would plan to keep for a long time. And I mentioned earlier that one of the reasons why I don't want to spend a whole ton of money on this is I can't think of a use case beyond outside of Christmas. How would I use this thing 365 days of the year? Because really what that would require is setting aside the space for the model train set. Now, I know one thing that people like to do, and I have thought about this idea as well, and perhaps it's possible to some degree. Eventually, I thought it would be neat to have, and again, many people have done this, have the train set running along kind of the roof line of a room or multiple rooms. So the train is not on the actual floor, but the train is up maybe 7 feet in the air, what have you, close to the ceiling, running around the ceiling of the room. There's pros and cons to that. That seems like a cool idea to me, but I would know that I would want to go further with it and have it going through multiple rooms. And, my wife would ask for something from the kitchen or whatever, and I would cook it and then put it on a plate and have it run out to the living room, something like that. I would just go nuts with it. The other option is you build a train table. So you build a specific kind of flat plywood type of table to build your train set on. And I know from that point, it would get way more elaborate in that it's not just going to be a plywood table with a train set and a rectangle on it. It's going to be quite a bit bigger. I'm going to build a town out of it. Maybe not go all the way and start spending thousands upon thousands of dollars on it, but I'm just trying to think of an effective way to get into the train hobby without fully committing to the space it would require or the altercations to my walls that it would require, but just something that I could break out for Christmas and then the other couple times a year when I feel in the mood to break out the train set. But I know that I will get into the train mood. I know that I will throughout the year. One reason why when we moved into this new house, one of the things I was excited about is now that I can have all, my wife calls them toys. And, I'll be honest, some of them are toys, but all my computer parts, all my radios, so my CB radio, I want to think about getting my ham license because it's very, very cheap and very easy to get an amateur radio license. So I have my antennas, have the CB radio. I have, my NVIDIA Shield portable video game system. I've done a whole video on that. Have all my tablets, have all my stuff laying around. So basically, the train would be added to all that stuff. I have all that stuff sorted to some degree. It's out and it's available to me for when the mood, I'm having trouble talking now, for when the mood strikes me to play, quote unquote, with that particular gadget or device or toy or tinker with that computer or tinker with that radio. it would become a thing where I want to tinker with this train set. So it would be a situation like that, not a permanent installment of all the trains and all the train tracks and the whole train set in the town, but something that I could take out when I feel like playing with it and then put back in its own little storage space, readily accessible when I don't want to play with it. So a train set like that. So if you have any suggestions for a train set that would fit that need, preferably metal, preferably do the little puffs of smoke with the vegetable oil or the cooking oil, and also not be so prohibitively expensive. If it could be under $200, I know I said under $150, that's even better. But if it can fit that criteria, under $200, don't have to sell a kidney to get it, and it's okay not being a permanent installation. It can kind of handle being used. And I'm not abusive to my stuff, but if you're taking things in and out of their container a couple times a year, it needs to be able to stand up for that. Hence why I would prefer it to be a metal train. And I know that's few and far between now, and you have to pay extra for the quality of a metal train. But just get at me. geektherapy@iheartmedia.com, Geek Therapy Radio on Facebook, Geek Therapy Radio on Twitter. There's all the other stuff too, YouTube and Instagram and all that good stuff. But those are channels, those are avenues to reach me instantly. Twitter and email and Facebook, that you can give these suggestions to me if you have them. If you don't know and you want to go on this journey with me, that's completely fine too. Let me know what you find. If I've sparked some sort of interest in you and these model trains, and you found something that might look cool to me, or what do I think about it, shoot me the link to it. I'm in the market for a model train set, but I don't want to saw off my arm and sell it on the black market to get one. So I think that'll wrap up this episode of Geek Therapy Radio podcast. Now my mind is all aflutter with trains, plane trains and automobiles, but right now it's trains. Be good to yourselves and others. Know that you are worthy of love. We are all geeks about something, so embrace your inner geek, especially if you're a geek about trains right now. 'Tis the year to be a geek about trains. Other than that, I'll talk to you tomorrow. Take care.
Therapy Radio, Saturday night at 10 on KPRC 950. Or listen anytime on our iHeartRadio app.